Texas just dropped the hammer. Governor Abbott signed a new law that slams the door on any city or county trying to sneak in a gun registry. Austin and places like it just lost their shot at local gun control, and the state made sure this ban is permanent. This is Ted from Line 45, and today we're talking about how Texas just pulled the plug on Austin's gun control dreams with a law that leaves no wiggle room for registries, buybacks, or any kind of local workaround. Before we dive in, do me a solid. Smash that subscribe, tap the bell, hit all the dang buttons down there. You don't gotta, but it keeps this train rolling and lets me crank out more of this wild gun talk for y'all. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to it. The big swing. Texas just made it official. Governor Greg Abbott signed Senate Bill 2284, and this thing permanently shuts the door on any city or county trying to create a gun registry. No exceptions, no loopholes. It's flat out banned across the entire state. That means Austin, Dallas, Houston, or any small town council can't pass some local rule to track who owns what. The state set one standard, and everybody has to play by it. What makes SB 2284 stand out is how permanent Island, Texas already had limits on registries since the 1,990 seconds, but those left wiggle room that some local governments were poking at. This new law clears all that out. It doesn't matter if a city says it's just collecting voluntary lists or a county sheriff tries to run their own database. None of it flies anymore. The law even blocks cities from requiring liability insurance for firearms, which gun rights supporters saw as a sneaky backdoor registry. The move came with Abbott's full support, and he pitched it as protecting Texans from creeping gun control at the local level. It's also backed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, the NRA, and the Texas State Rifle Association, who all see it as locking in uniform rules so gun owners don't have to worry about patchwork laws depending on what city they're in. And that's just the start. Because SB 2284 doesn't stop with guns, it casts a much wider net. More than just guns. Here's the part that caught me off guard. This law doesn't just slam the door on gun registries. It stretches way past that. We're talking knives, air guns, bows, arrows, and even ammunition. If a city council thought they could get clever and start tracking folks for carrying a hunting bow or stockpiling ammo, nope, this law shuts that down too. Texas wanted it airtight, and they made damn sure of it. And it doesn't stop there. Some cities were floating the idea of forcing gun owners to buy liability insurance, a kind of sneaky way to make it harder and more expensive to exercise your rights. SB 2284 wipes that idea clean off the board. No city or county in Texas can require insurance for firearms now, period. What you're seeing is the state stepping in and saying, look, there's not going to be one rule in Houston, another in Austin, and something totally different in San Antonio. They wanted one clear standard across all of Texas, and they weren't about to leave loopholes for local governments to squeeze through. And if that sounds tough, wait until you hear what kind of teeth they put in this law to make sure cities don't try to sneak around it. The teeth in the law. The thing about SB 2284 is it ain't just words on paper. Texas gave this law some real bite. If a city or county even thinks about running a registry or pulling some backdoor move, the state attorney general can come down on them hard. We're talking lawsuits, forcing local governments to cough up legal fees, and in the worst cases, actually prosecuting local officials who ignore the law. That's not some empty threat. It's written right into the bill. And here's what I want you to know. The law just kicked in on the 1st of September 2025. So, cities that were maybe scheming in the background, their clock's already running out. They either follow the new rule or get ready to fight the state. And honestly, they're not going to win that battle. It's a clear message from the top. Texas isn't playing around with patchwork laws or creative loopholes. They want one rule statewide, and they've armed the AG with all the tools needed to smack down anybody who tries to push back. Now, laws don't just pop up out of nowhere. There's always a story behind them, and this one's got roots going back decades. Why lawmakers pushed it. This law didn't come out of thin air. Texas has had restrictions on gun registries since the 90 seconds, but over the years, some cities started sniffing around for ways to get around it. After the 2019 Walmart shooting in El Paso, there was talk in places like San Antonio about trying buyback programs or even informal databases. That spooked a lot of folks who saw it as the first step toward building a registry. Then you had another flashpoint: foster care agencies in Texas asking families to list out every gun they owned. That hit a nerve. Gun owners went ballistic over it, and lawmakers answered back earlier with HB 1403, which banned that practice. SB 2284 is basically the follow-up, making sure no city, county, or agency can start pulling those same stunts again. So when Abbott signed this thing, it wasn't just political theater. It was the state putting its boot down after years of little flare-ups that made gun owners nervous. Every time someone floated the idea of tracking firearms, even indirectly, it just poured gas on the fire. SB 2284 is Austin and San Antonio getting told flat out, nope, you're not going to play around with this anymore. And Texas isn't the only one doing it. Other states have been moving in the same direction. Texas versus the nation. What Texas just did lines up with a bigger trend you're seeing across the country. They're not the only ones slamming the brakes on registries. Florida's had a ban in place, same with Idaho, Tennessee, and even Pennsylvania. That list has been growing as more states lean into this Second Amendment sanctuary idea, where they basically say, we're not going to help enforce new gun control laws. Texas jumped on that bandwagon back in 2021, and SB 2284 feels like the next step in that playbook. It's not just about bragging rights either. When the second largest state in the country plants its flag on an issue, other red states start paying attention. A law like this could easily become the model for lawmakers in places like Oklahoma, Arkansas, or Montana who want to make the same point to their cities. So while the fight feels local, it has national weight. Gun rights groups will point to Texas and say, see, this is how you lock things down. And critics will do the opposite, warning that Texas is shutting off tools that could help cops trace crime guns. Either way, it makes Texas the loudest voice in the room when it comes to keeping registries off the table. And once you've got the nation watching, you know both sides are going to come out swinging. Two sides of the fence. Now, like any gun law in Texas, this one's got folks split right down the middle. On one side, you've got Abbott, Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, the NRA, and the Texas State Rifle Association patting themselves on the back. They're saying this locks in clear rules, keeps gun owners from worrying about what city they're in, and stops registries from ever creeping in through the back door. For them, SB 2284 is about trust, making sure the government can't quietly build a list of who owns what. On the flip side, critics aren't holding back either. Gun control groups, a lot of urban Democrats, and even some law enforcement leaders are calling it political theater. They argue registries were already off the table, so this new law is just Abbott flexing for headlines. Some cops also say it ties their hands when it comes to tracing crime guns or running local buybacks, which are now flat-out banned. So, depending on who you ask, SB 2284 is either a solid win for the Second Amendment or a stunt that takes tools away from communities. What it really highlights is that classic Texas split, rural folks backing it hard, while the big cities are the ones bristling. And that divide is exactly what's going to shape what happens next. What it means going forward. Here's what this really boils down to if you live in Texas. Nobody can make you register your guns, nobody can slap you with some goofy insurance mandate, and nobody's running city buybacks anymore. That's done. The state slammed that door shut and welded it closed. So whether you're in Austin, Houston, or out in some small ranch town, the rules are the same across the board. And honestly, that's what a lot of folks wanted. No guessing, no games. Now, I can damn near guarantee this isn't the last stop. Other red states are going to see what Texas did and think, yeah, we want some of that too. At the same time, blue states are already running in the opposite direction, tightening things up with permits, registries, and whatever else they can cook up. That's where you see the country splitting further. Different rules depending on which side of the line you're standing on. And here's the part that gets me. Texas ain't shy about pushing further. You block registries today, maybe tomorrow it's federal suppressor regs or SBR rules on the chopping block. Hard to say where it ends, but one thing's for sure. They're not waiting around for DC to tell them how to run their gun laws.